Hi, this is Kendra from Pencil and Pigment, and today I am going to be working on a commission while I chat with you, and I need to find my brushes, and I kind of wanted to show you how I have it all laid out. I have just a little towel for excess moisture because I'm doing watercolor. I have my palette here, I have some tubes of paint, I have Lunar Earth, Lunar Black, and Burnt Umber. I have a couple jars of water here, my brushes laid out. I wanted to have some sort of deep topic chats with you because I think there's some interesting things we could be talking about together that would be very beneficial for folks to listen to, maybe comment on, if they're interested in engaging on that level. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is hobbies for artists. And this is going to kind of be sort of a two-part thought process because there's two things about hobbies I want to chat about. And the first one is sort of what happens to your hobby when you decide to make art and creating a career. Where does your hobby go? Does it morph? Does it change? And for this sort of conversation, I feel like there may or may not be one right answer. There may be as many different answers as there are artists and creators commenting. So it's sort of just a way to have a conversation, to maybe give other creators, other artists ideas. Yeah, I want to have a chat about it because I think it's very interesting. If you started your career, and I'm just gonna pick, something at random like watercolor, and that was your hobby and you fell in love with it, and you then decided, oh wow, I would love to do this for a living, and I'm doing a pet portrait of a dog named Bruno. Whatever you decide to do commissions for, do you still then enjoy your hobby, or is it now something you need a break from? And is your hobby still something art related? Because I have found, I have tried many different forms of art, many different mediums and things. And when I try and make a different art a hobby, case in point for me specifically was doing wheel thrown pottery. Now, if you understand the time and energy it takes to do wheel thrown pottery, you're now laughing at me because it's a full-time job. It's a full-time job for that process. It's not just making the pot, it's coming back and trimming the base or making a handle depending on what you're making. And then it needs to be fired a couple times. It needs to be glazed. What I found when I was doing pottery is that I didn't want to draw on my pottery. I didn't want to put any designs. I just kind of wanted to dip it in different colors and call it good. Because the second I started and tried to draw on a piece of pottery, it felt like work. It felt like my job. And I really wanted to remove that feeling from there and just sort of create. Now, I took a pottery class September of 2019 and quickly realized, oh, you know what would be awesome is if I catapulted this class to make a bunch of Christmas presents for folks and family and friends. And in doing so, I then it became a lot of work. I had lists of things I wanted to make for certain people. Like, I just think I approach all art the same way, with sort of the same enthusiasm and the same drive. And for me personally, there is no sort of like holding back. I just am kind of 100% with anything art related. So I realized art as a hobby isn't. And another example would be, I'm teaching my daughter how to draw. We do homeschool, and my eldest is in 9th grade, so homeschool high school. She's 14. And I'm teaching her to draw, and it feels like a job. I mean, teaching is a job anyway, and homeschool is a job. But when I'm teaching piano to our youngest daughter, it feels very, very different than teaching illustration. So anything art related, and sometimes she's just like, draw with me, it'll be super fun. And I'm like, okay. And we draw characters and things together, but it just feels like I'm still doing illustration work. It feels like my job. It doesn't feel like I'm just having a little sketching session with my daughter. It's not a negative thing. It's not a disappointment thing. I just want to clarify. It's not like an ungrateful thing. When I say work, I don't count work as something bad. I love to work. I love working on the house. I love working in the yard. I love working on my art. I love working in sketchbooks. I love work. Not a fan of having a job or a boss, but I love work. So for me, sometimes when I think of like hobbies and things, I don't associate that with that feeling of work and wanting to assign goals and wanting to get better and wanting to change things up. So when you take your art and you start charging for it, and then there becomes an expectation either to produce more or to start shipping or whatever it evolves into, it's just different. It feels different. So for artists that have turned their love of art into a job, what happens there? What have you done? Do you still do other forms of art? Do you still work? I know folks like animators who do tons and tons of drawing. They tend to come home and they don't draw. Kind of like chefs who cook all day don't come home and cook for themselves. Like a lot of animators that work in studios and stuff just work around the clock, work really, really long hours. And so working on things for themselves or just fun little studies and stuff, like they're kind of done for the day. So what then becomes your creative hobby? Personally, I'm working on the eyeballs in case you're like, what is she doing? It's eyeballs. Personally, I love to garden. I will clip in some little videos. I'm teaching my kids right now. Our eldest is doing biology, so we're doing a bunch of botany stuff. And I'm showing her the easiest things to sort of grow. So we have little sprouts. We have, kind of a terrarium type thing, but we're just starting really simple with like moss. We're doing things like that, seeing what we can root in water, like rooting herbs in water and then cooking with them, because all our kids love to cook and stuff. So there are some simple things for gardeners, but I find sometimes when I am gardening or laying out gardening plans that when I go to sort of execute my garden, I start thinking in terms of art and design. Like, okay, highest plants in the back, don't forget to rotate them. They steal nutrients, intercrop them with something that gives more nitrogen if this plant removes nitrogen. It'd be really cool to have the orange plants next to the purple or blue plants because they're complementary. Like, I really start to think in terms of design. And again, I have a Bachelor of Science in Design, graphic design. In case you're wondering like what my education thing is. So I start thinking like that, and I don't always want to think that way. I kind of want to just sort of relax into a hobby, and it can be very, very difficult. So I find things like reading, listening to music, sometimes watching movies and discussing movies. I often read some of the same books my kids are reading, so we can just like talk about it and have a little discussion. Things that are very hands off. Because that's my other thing is if you are doing tons and tons of art and you're working a lot with your hands, which a lot of artists do, taking care of your hands, making sure you're not getting arthritis or carpal tunnel or any of those sort of long-term things that can happen to the hands. My second portion of this sort of question is, what hobbies do you have that don't involve using your hands so you can give your hands a break? Because a lot of us need things that aren't hand related. And you're like, oh. And that's sort of where the book thing kind of comes in. Yeah, it's very interesting. I've seen artists kind of talk about this on Twitter, but Twitter is such a short platform for responses and things. I don't feel like it lends itself to depth and really getting in there and talking about the things folks they want to know about. And again, I don't know that there's any right or wrong answers to this. I just think that it's good to have some conversations about this stuff. Like where does your hobby go? Do you do anything art related? How do you set boundaries? If you work from home and you're doing art as a medium or as a career, how do you set boundaries with that? How do you make sure that your art isn't getting in the way of your life? You're still doing things with friends. Part of the thing of doing freelance and working from home as an artist is you have to wear all these different hats. So you're not just the artist that creates, you're also the promoter, you're also the advertiser, you're also the salesperson. You could be the web designer working on your web page. There's so many different aspects of this that sort of get lost. And folks forget to think about, oh yeah, I have to do that portion too. That when you go to do a hobby, what's left? What's left for artists as hobbies? And that can be kind of tricky. It can be very tricky. I find things that aren't anything near my desk. So going outside, going on a hike, exploring. But then I want to bring my sketchbook. And the second I bring my sketchbook, I'm not taking a break from art. I'm not just being out in nature and enjoying that portion of nature. And sometimes I have to remember to turn it off and just be present and not be buried in a sketchbook or behind a camera, looking at things that my kids want to talk about that they have found. It can be a challenge. So I was just interested in having this conversation with you and seeing how other artists, other creators, other folks handle this and process this. Have you found that you lost your hobby? And if you have, what are your feelings about that? Or maybe if watercolor was your hobby, maybe you can sort of compartmentalize and now you just do pastels for fun. I just find art is art is art. And while I find it incredibly relaxing and it's how I unwind and I love filling a sketchbook and drawing, I draw every single day. So, and that's on my Instagram if you want to see what I've drawn for the day. That's sort of my daily accountability vlog. It relaxes me to draw every day. It's sort of, some people will turn on TV or play video games or turn on a movie, whatever you unwind with. I unwind with doing like an illustration, which sounds kind of silly, but that's how I relax and unwind and process things. I just draw through it. Kind of like art therapy, but not nearly as formal or anything like that. So it's just, I don't know. Your hobby takes a different shape. And acknowledging that and understanding that once you've made it a career, it's different. And there's nothing wrong with it being different. I just kind of wanted to have a chat about it. Because I see artists ask each other a lot, what do you do for fun? Like, what are your hobbies? And a lot of artists are like, I don't have any. And again, I think animation is one of those, or folks that turn out a high quantity of like comic books, things at that level. I can't fathom, because I don't do that quantity. But I hear folks talking about it, and I'm just so curious as to how they feel and how they process that and what they're doing. If you are an artist or creator, I mean, and art is your hobby, by all means, put a comment in the comment section about it, like how you fell in love with it, how you discovered it, what your favorite thing is about it. If you have turned to being making art sort of a career, whether it's a full-time, part-time, or side hustle, I'm real curious what you do with your hobby, how you protect your hobby, if art is still your hobby. How do you safeguard your hands? Because I find that if the toughest thing on my hands is doing pen and ink out of all the mediums. I know it's kind of strange, but it is. That after I do pen and ink for about 4 hours, my hands are done. Like, I can't draw anymore for the day. Like, that's it. Whereas watercolors are different, pastels are different, just because I'm holding a brush and not a pen. So I'm just really, really curious. I just wanted to have this conversation with folks. You know, like how you're doing, how you relax, how you process through your art. The whole thing is just fascinating to me. I think as artists, we should come together and have these conversations and inspire each other. And again, I don't think there's any one right answer or one wrong answer. I think, you know, there could be 5 different things in conjunction together that would work or work for you. I'm just really, really curious because I find it very, very difficult. After I'm done drawing and processing and working through my stuff and doing a drawing for the evening, I don't then want to turn around and do more. I've already done it. So if you have thoughts or comments or opinions, or you do something super unique as a hobby, and maybe it's not with hands or it is with hands, I'd just be really, really curious to know how you approach that, how you safeguard that, how you keep that in your life. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, for chatting with me. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Nope, I will talk to you next week. I will stop saying that. I just keep forgetting. Okay, I'll talk to you next week. I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye.